Hi everyone, welcome back. This week we're going to be talking about writing up qualitative research and strategies for dissemination. You have two readings. There are two chapters in the Creswell and Toth text, and I suggest you just skim them. You don't need to read them super closely. And there's an article by Pratt about tips for writing up qualitative research. So I have assigned that as a reading as well. There are many potential audiences, especially with occupational therapy research. So you might write something that's targeted at clinicians. Maybe your goal is to influence practice or inform practice in some way. You may also want to write something that is addressed to patients or consumers of occupational therapy services. Sometimes we want to also reach other professions related to the ones we work with or who we share the work environment with. This may include management of the kinds of facilities where services are provided. And policymakers may also be the target of research findings. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the potential audiences you may think about who may be appropriate for disseminating your research. So now that you've collected your data and you've done your analysis, how do you write up your qualitative study? The first thing is to really understand your audience. So depending on who you are writing for, you may want to adjust the reading level of what you write. And also remember to consider their expertise in the topic. So you're going to write something very differently if you're writing it for colleagues who are experts in your field versus something that is intended for patients or perhaps policymakers. You also want to think about telling a story with your research. So with qualitative data, there are many ways we can organize it. So you kind of want to go through a process of setting the stage, setting the background, identifying the gap in the literature, stating your study objective, which ostensibly should fill that gap. Then you report your findings, and then you have to circle back and explain how the findings enhance understanding of the topic or how they specifically address that gap in the literature. There are many kinds of dissemination tools, and we are expanding this all the time. Most traditionally, we see for research dissemination is journal articles, peer-reviewed publications that are published in journals in a field that's relevant for the study. In the US, obviously, the American Journal of Occupational Therapy is the most prominent occupational therapy journal. There are other national journals such as the Canadian Journal of Occupational Therapy and the Australian Occupational Therapy Journal, British Journal of Occupational Therapy, but there are many other journals that have that publish articles that may be relevant to our profession, such as journals on certain professional areas. So there are journals in the area of pediatrics, of adult rehab, of geriatrics, and across the lifespan and all the different conditions. So just make sure you're aware of the span of journals that are related to the research that you've done, and make sure, and if you are writing a journal article, you want to have a good match between that journal's audience and purpose and your study. We may also disseminate through presentations. These can happen at professional conferences, but also sometimes they are on a smaller scale, done locally for class, such as what you will do for this class, and also in your workplaces. You may want to be sharing your results there. We write up abstracts. Some conferences publish their abstracts in their related journal. For instance, American Journal of Occupational Therapy does publish abstracts that are accepted for presentation at the AOTA annual conference. Likewise, the Archives of Physical Medicine and Rehab publishes the abstracts for accepted posters for the ACRM annual conference. Sometimes we want to do a summary sheet with just kind of the key points of the study, and this might be for a more lay audience. So that is a product that can be created. As well as sometimes when we have really important results or they're in a high profile journal, our institutions might do a press release to let people know about it. And there's also other internet tools such as blogs that you can use to disseminate. More and more people are using social media to share their work. So there are a lot of different avenues for dissemination to keep in mind, and often we want to target the right dissemination products based on the audience we're trying to reach.